I'd just like to introduce you to rainbow stamping, which is a fantastic technique that's really easy to create, but can give us some really different and unusual effects when we are doing our stamping. So, all I've done is I've taken one of my sentiment stamps. Now this is one of our rare earth aspirational stamps, and it's from the stamp set that's called Commit. And it just says, let your soul shine. And I want to stamp this out, but I don't want to stamp it out all in one colour. I want to get a couple of colours onto there. And that's the technique that I'm going to show you now. So I'm just going to mount it onto my acrylic block. Now you can use an acrylic block like I am, or if you'd rather you can use a stamping platform like your rare earth load and fold. It's totally up to you, whichever you'd prefer. I've just got some white cardstock. I'm going to show you two variations with this. So I'm going to start off with a slightly more subtle effect, so I'm going to use paler inks, and then I'm going to go on to a slightly more bold effect. Now I'm only using 2 colours of ink here, but you can use as many as you'd like. When we say rainbow, it can truly be rainbow, so we can have 7 colours, as many as you like. Completely up to you, but I'm just going to take it quite back to basics with just a couple of colours of ink. So for this first one, I'm going to use Pink Petal and Powder Blue. Now these are Rare Earth Reactions ink pads. These are hybrid ink pads, which means they're a fusion between both dye and pigment ink. They give us quite a chalky finish, but they do give us quite a nice stamp finish. More so than we get with a dye ink, which you can find sometimes does pool and bead a little bit on your stamp. So the properties of the pigment ink within these ink pads means that they stamp out images really quite nicely. They're great for using with backgrounds as well. So when we are using the technique of rainbow stamping, I tend to ink up using the palest colour first and then the darkest colour. There's lots of different ways you can do it, and you will find different techniques and different methods with your rainbow stamping. This is just the method that I find works really nicely, and it's really quite simple and quick to create. So that's what I just would like to share with you today. So starting off with my Pink Petal, and I'm just going to randomly ink up this stamp. Okay, so pretty much all over, but I'm not worrying too much about filling in all of it. So it's going to give us quite a distressed feel. It's not going to be that perfect, crisp, all over image. It's going to be almost a little bit sketchy, if you like. Quite fun. Then I'm just going in with my darker ink pad, which is the Powder Blue, and just adding a little bit of ink. Now if you do find your ink gets a little bit contaminated, don't worry, that's absolutely fine. Just get a piece of scrap card or paper and just smoosh the ink out onto there, and you'll see that just cleans up your ink pad and just gets any of the other colour of ink off there. So at this stage what you can do is you can actually spritz your stamp with water, and that'll give you a more of a diffused blended look. Perfect if you're creating backgrounds. But in this instance I'm not actually going to do that with it being a sentiment stamp. So just hovering over my cardstock, so I've just got some white cardstock here. Nice smooth cardstock to give me quite a crisp effect. There's no texture to it. Just going to stamp that out. And as you can see, we've got a really interesting effect onto there. So you can see you've got the blue and the pink. They've sort of merged a little bit, so we do have a little bit of purple onto there as well. But I'd like to show you a slightly bolder look with slightly darker colours. So I'm just going to give that quick wipe over with a baby wipe, just to get the that ink off there. So those were our reactions ink pads, but you can do the same technique with our rare earth blending ink pads. So I've got the red and the blue here. Now these are much darker, stronger colours, so it's going to give us a much bolder effect. If that's the effect you want to create, then brilliant. So again, I'm just going to go in with my lightest colour of ink first, and just going to ink up the stamp in random places, and then the parts that I've not inked up, I'm going to go back in with my blue, my second colour, and just fill in those gaps. What you'll find is if you look online at other people doing this technique, some people actually ink up with one colour, stamp it out using a stamping platform, clean the stamp off, then go back in with the other colour, ink it up and stamp over the top, so they don't mix the 2 colours at the same time. If you want to go with that technique, that's brilliant too. I just find this way it's a lot quicker and you get that blend of colours quite nicely. Now again, if I have contaminated that ink pad, I can just smoosh that out onto some scrap cardstock, and that will clean that ink up quite nicely. If you do find at this point that you are lacking a little bit of red, maybe there's a bit too much blue on that image now, just go back in with your first ink pad, and again, if you contaminate it, just get that colour out on a piece of scrap cardstock. You can be doing this with any stamp at all. It doesn't have to be a sentiment stamp. Brilliant for backgrounds. Perhaps you've got butterfly stamps, anything at all. It's a technique that you can apply to whatever you'd like to. So again, just pressing down on that stamp, and as you can see, we've got that same effect, that rainbow, those two colours onto there. Remember, you can use as many colours of ink as you would like. You get two very different effects. That's very subtle, quite girly, quite pretty, whereas that's very bold and bright. Completely up to you, but that's just rainbow stamping, so it's really easy to do, and I think you're really going to enjoy when you get into your rainbow stamping.